presence. One together now. What is vibing? This is Vish, and today I'll be talking to you about the triple layer cake. I've mentioned this in a lot of other videos, and I'm finally going to be discussing a bit more in depth what it means, how it even formed as a pop, as you might be wondering what is a pop, which I'll be getting into another video on. However, the triple layer cake, what is it? Well, first off, let's just start off with a little food inspiration take on what it is. And the brother Kassoon, actually, he's a spiritual brother. We talk every single day, and yeah, basically, he loves desserts and he loves sweets, at least as he calls it, the self does, right, for him. It was something that he was trying to overcome as a temptation, quote unquote. So for him, it was really just trying to overcome avoiding that, or whether it's avoiding sweets, avoiding sugars, things along those lines. And so we would have these spiritual discussions. I'm pretty sure that's what really helped contribute to the forming of this realization, as I like to call it. What does it prefer to call it? So, triple layer cake. Well, as the name provides, it's 3 layers. Let's start with the top. The top layer is going to be very much analogous to, let's say, icing, or very surface level, is how I view it. Middle layer is where it's essentially this path of entering a mode or dimension of, in a way, seeking, realizing that life has more to it than just the surface, but maybe not sure where to go from there. You're realizing the not, but not sure the is-ness, yes, the isness of life yet. The third layer is the transcendence layer, where you transcend into that layer. I mean, you could technically transcend into each layer, but this specifically is about the deepest layer. And I guess the quick analogy I wanted to provide for y'all with regards to if I were to make this an actual cake would be the top layer being this chocolatey sprinkles, all that icing and stuff like that, right? That's the top layer of the cake. The middle layer is going to be sugar-free, it's going to be gluten-free, it's going to be dairy-free, it's going to be vegan, it's going to be quote-unquote healthier, right? The bottom layer is really just nothing. It's there, and these 2 layers are on top of it, but it's, let's call it nothing in a way, where it's essentially no cake. And what that really just means as to why I even kind of provided for this kind of breakdown, and I'm going to be providing a lot of examples as I talk to provide better clarity, or more clarity, not better, but more clarity, as to what it each means and what does the triple layer cake mean as a whole. So I'll be eventually kind of briefing it up and connecting the dots, but for now I will be piecing the dots out towards you. So the top layer. So essentially this is the very surface level type of almost attachment that's present amongst people that love sweets or love desserts. I mean, it's a very common thing. It's an evolutionary thing as to why we love sugars, because it's instant feel. But now, due to the abundance of access, it's become an attachment, identification, addiction even to sweets. And there's a reason why in America obesity is such a problem, health problems, heart problems, and you get the idea. But anyways, these are people that are seeking essentially to just eat instant gratification. They're just seeking out of attachment. That's the top layer. The middle layer are people that have experienced that, or maybe are just like this before. I mean, there's no, you have to be here or here, you have to go through the layer. You can skip dimensions if you want to call it that. But so these people are people that have either experienced it before. I mean, mostly I would say that's the case. But I really just, I mean, through experience, probably have seen very few people that are just naturally inclined towards vegan-free, I mean, not vegan-free, vegan and sugar-free cakes. Usually there's people that have experienced the other, right? And so, anyways, these are people that have experienced the otherness, which is in this case a very surface level, unconscious, quote unquote, and are seeking a healthier option. So there's still an attachment to sweets that taste pleasure, taste sensation, but out of the healthy seeking that they're on, they want to take a healthier option, right? So like I said earlier, that's vegan, and it's, again, not healthy because it's still sweet, but it's healthier. And the bottom layer where there's nothing is really just people that have no attachment to the sweet. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to eat it or you can't eat it, but it's something that isn't even present as an unconscious attachment, as an unconscious thought, unconscious pattern. It's all been dissipated, disintegrated, if you've had this pattern in the past, or in the very few instances where you've just never had an inclination towards sweets or cakes. Again, very few people out there, but just because you haven't had an inclination towards sweets or cakes doesn't necessarily mean that you are automatically in this bottom layer. For you, it could be something else that can be applied with this analogy. So for you, let's just say your Achilles heel is, it can be anything, honestly, but let's just say it's, just to keep it simple for comparison's sake, it's spice, right? So another instance. But for others, it could just be even a more, the whole point of this really is to learn to almost reduce that karmic baggage that you have, or reduce the attachments that are present, the unconscious ones specifically. And so even for certain people, let's just say playing the piano, they're super attached to it, right? It's all about realizing that there's nothing wrong with doing it. There's nothing wrong with having fun. I mean, life itself is a play when you be detached from it, but it's really just realizing how you can be connected with something and detached at the same time, which I'll be making another video on. But anyways, with that being said, it's even things like piano or even healthy eating or healthy exercising as well. People can develop obsessions over that, right? So I'll be getting into those examples a bit later. But with that being said, wow, I guess I've already crossed a good amount of time, or a decent amount of time. So I'll start briefing it up. Basically, another really beautiful analogous example would be the political spectrum, as I view it personally, or not personally, but from the experience. I view society as, I mean, a lot of spiritual teachers consider too, it's the world awakening, and there's different people at different levels, but overall, as you awaken, I mean, you're representing the awakening of the whole. And I've actually made a whole other video on the world awakening, but I view society becoming awakening also at the political level. And what I mean by that is really just how the world used to be so attached to the conservative traditional ideals. Let's just use the US conservative example, right? And I'm sure there's people that are relatively conservative, but also very spiritual. So I'm just using the more extreme examples here, right? Of overly attached conservatives that, for example, think if you're gay, it's a sin, and that everyone should own a gun, for instance, and things along those lines, right? I view that, essentially, it's like this view that the government shouldn't get involved at all at the economic level, or should try not to, but then they should be very involved at the social level, is what I kind of view this conservative kind of push towards. So that's very top layer. But now society's kind of progressed from that, so it is becoming progressive, but I think I view it as more of like a middle layer. And now this is the more extremely, so the top layer is extreme right, and then the middle layer is like the extreme left. This huge attachment towards, human rights, or just all sorts of rights. They're not necessarily even just human. I mean, human rights are obviously very fundamental, so I want to make that clear. But at the same time, the way you go about fighting for that, the attachment that's present. Really like this big aggression towards people that, for example, don't stand up with you. I mean, I'll be making another video on this, but just because someone isn't on social media standing up with you doesn't mean that they're not doing something in their private life. They could be doing something even more than you. They could be donating. They could be actually a part of an organization. So just because you don't overtly stand out or stand up on social media doesn't mean that you don't stand for a cause. So, but people that like to bash others for not standing up, that basically think also that, also people that are very, ostracizing of the extreme right as well, or even just people that are even a little right. I view that as very middle there, and it's also things like, for example, I'll make another video on this too, and this is where I very much resonate with Sadhguru. A social topic like LGBTQ, hopefully I said the right letters, it's, I guess the comparison for this, to break it down into the triple layer cake, would be top layer conservatives viewing this as, no, it's a sin, you shouldn't be doing this, gay marriage should not be allowed. But then the middle layer saying, no, we must allow it, it should be fun, it should be open. But then it's almost overly talked about, overly, like gay pride, I understand to an extent, but overly gay pride where it's like thrown in your face. And then, just because someone maybe doesn't agree with it, like bashing them for this. I'm all about open discussion, regardless of what view you have. And so really that's like that middle layer. And the third layer, really the deeper layer, is the acknowledgement that people should be allowed to be gay if they want to. It's totally up to them. There's no need to get involved, whether it's suppressing them or taking their rights away. But at the same time, you don't necessarily need to endorse and bring extra pride. Pride itself is a very egoic term, attachment term. So that's where the bottom layer kind of presents itself with that example. And hopefully that made sense, and connecting it to the dots of really just the political analogy for this and the social topic being gay rights, for instance. So yeah, that's most of what I really had to share with you. I mean, I guess to give another quick example, if this wasn't too clear, with, let's just say, even exercising, right? So the triple layer analogy here, the triple layer cake would be the top layer where people just don't exercise, they're lazy, they're quote unquote bums. So that's that. The middle layer, so now they've transcended into it, and they're realizing that, oh wow, I do need to exercise, the body needs it, but now they're doing it every single day out of attachment. Let's say they miss a workout day, they're just like, all grumpy and just throwing a fit, and let's say they get injured even, they can't work out for months. They go through extreme mental hurdles or like challenges. The bottom layer is where you realize that the body needs care and that it needs physical movement. I would say it's definitely a necessity, but it's not an attachment. So if the body needs some rest, you give it some rest. You are maintaining the body consciously, but without attachment. So that's that example. I know it's a very different kind of connection, but I wanted to make that clear because it can apply to anything in life. And that's where the triple layer analogy really works, just for everything, right? It's all about transcending those layers. And yeah, for certain people, you can maybe skip from the top to the bottom, or maybe it takes time, top, middle, bottom, or it's even possible to degress, I guess, if that's the right word, to go back. But it's all about just being conscious about how this can be applied to everything, really. So hopefully this made sense. I would love to hear your views on this triple layer cake. Also, what is something you're grateful for? Also, I would love to hear how you could use this, or what's your analogy for the triple layer cake and how it works for your example of what you're trying to work on towards becoming more conscious. Thank you so much for watching. Make it a great day. Take it joyfully. And let's take a nice presence breath together. So, presence. Stay conscious and ecstasy.